Welcome to Hey Therapist. I'm your host, Leslie Ross. With me is my producer, Jay Wesley Lindley. Let's get mental.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hey Therapist. Today, we are going to be talking about healthy fighting, how to fight fair. I've dealt with a lot of couples in my career and for myself and all the things. I've been part of couples. And I think it's really important to learn how to fight fair when we are in these relationships, because fighting fair is so important. And a lot of us don't know how to fight fair. A lot of us grow up and we watch parents argue. We watch people in the home just scream at each other and then go on like nothing happened. And the way that the adults around you operate is the way that you learn to operate in the world. And that's why I think it's so important that you understand the way you operate and the way you operate to your partner, because you want to know what's going on. You want to know what's happening in the world. And when you're watching people argue, when you're watching people fight growing up, you think that is normal. And then maybe you go over to someone's house and their parents just kind of bicker at each other maybe, or they get along perfectly. And you're like, wait, people don't have to scream and yell. And, if you are the parent and you are screaming and yelling at your partner and your kids are there and your kids are watching, you're teaching them how to be in relationships. And that's why I always say it's better. And there's a lot of studies now that have come out too that, children who come from divorce, whose parents end up in better relationships, are better off than people whose parents stay together just to stay together. A lot of people believe, well, we have to stay together for the kids, but what are you doing? Are you sleeping in separate rooms? Are you teaching them that you don't have to communicate? Are you getting mad and storming off and then getting mad at your kid when they slam a door? Are you getting mad at your kid when they yell back, when that's all they see? When you get in conflict, when you get in heightened emotions, you yell at each other and then you move on, or they withdraw. You get angry at them and they withdraw. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And they just apologize automatically. And you're like, what is happening? Because that's how kids learn how to operate in relationships, is how they watch the adults around them communicate. And it is possible that you see that and you're like, I don't like the way this feels. I don't want this for my life. So you grow up into an adult and you never get into screaming matches, or someone raises their voice at you and you're like, nope, not doing that. I grew up with people arguing. I grew up with people screaming and yelling and doing all those things. And I don't want that. I don't want to be a part of that. So you move on. You go on not even recognizing that you're operating poorly in a relationship. And you may get with someone who operates healthy in a relationship and will say, we're not going to do this right now. We need to take a break because I don't want to fight with you. But that person who is a chaser wants to have that conversation right then. Well, that's not healthy. You may have grown up with a belief, well, we don't go to bed angry. Well, sometimes you need to, because nothing good may come from having that conversation right then. When we do that, though, we have to communicate that. And that's what I want to talk about, is how do we fight fair? Everyone's heard about love languages and all of those things from Chapman, and Chapman has some good relationship work. And it's important that we show love for each other, but it's also important that we have to understand how to have conflict. Because if you are with someone, you are going to have conflict. You cannot be in a relationship where you're not going to get on each other's nerves. You cannot be in a relationship where the four horsemen aren't going to raise their other ugly head. That criticism, that defensiveness, that contempt, all of those things, they come into play sometimes. If you don't have a healthy fighting style, then having a healthy relationship is going to be really hard for you. Because if you are an unfair fighter, then it's going to be really hard to be in a relationship with someone. And there's a few different types of responses to conflict. So that's what we're going to talk about, is how do you respond to conflict? How do you communicate when you're upset? And it's really important to communicate well when you're upset, especially if it's to someone that you love, because you don't want to hurt the person you love's feelings. And you may say, well, I can't control it. But that's just not true. One, you don't want to. If your response is, I can't control it, you don't want to. And the you don't want to relates to put in the work. You don't want to put in the work to control it. You don't want to put in the work to change the way you communicate. You don't want to put in the work You are just used to doing things the way you're doing. And again, it may be the way you were raised. This is how my mom and dad felt like this. Well, how was their relationship? Well, I mean, they were fine. Were they? Are they still together? Do they still talk to each other like that? How does that make you feel? And it's just one of those things that you may not even like the way you're communicating, but you're still doing it. So let's talk about some different styles. Our first style we're going to talk about is the aggressor. It is the person who their first instinct is going to be to argue. They may have a really, really short fuse. You may say something just really basic, or you may ask for a basic need, and they automatically just crank up the intensity. They automatically go into being aggressive or hot-headed. And, they resort to anger and maybe saying mean things. They may be the one that automatically comes back, well, if you would do it this way, then I wouldn't have to do that. It's like, ew, what? No. They're going to try to win. They are fighting to win. They're fighting to shut you down. And the aggressive style person doesn't care if they burn bridges. They want to win, and they don't even understand the damage that they're doing. And I say that kind of with an asterisk. They know they're hurting your feelings. They know they're hitting below the belt, but they're doing it to win. So in their mind, it's justified, and they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want someone to come at them. They don't want someone to hurt their feelings. So they are always on the defensive, and it comes across that they value themselves more than they value you. It comes across that they value winning more than they value the relationship. And they very well may. They are going to be the critic. If you bring up something they do or didn't do, and they say, well, you were just sitting around all day too. You could have got up and done it. Well, okay, but you told me you would do it, or you don't like it when I do that, or whatever it is. But yet they're going to put the blame back on you. They're going to be super defensive. They're going to go on that counterattack. And there's going to be some contempt in there. They're going to deliberately cause some pain to you. They're going to talk to you in just ways that you're just like, oh my God, do you even like me? Like, how can you say that stuff to me? And it's because that is their fighting style. They're very aggressive, and they're very critical and defensive and contempt, and there's just no having a conversation with them. So if this is the person you're in a relationship with, or if this is the person that you are, stop it. But if this is the person you're in a relationship with, you may get into the mindset where you just avoid. And that's our next style we're going to discuss, is those people that avoid because they're afraid of someone coming at them hot, because they're afraid of an argument. They prefer to just avoid altogether. And I always say, if it's something that's important to you, if it's something that you need to talk about, if it's something that's made you emotional or hurt your feelings, you can have a conversation. And not every conversation is conflict. Not every conversation needs to be an argument. It can just be a conversation. But if you're an avoidant personality person, or if you're an avoidant arguer, they are going to come across really cold or distant or silent. They may be the person is upset, and you ask them what's wrong, and they say nothing. And something's wrong, but they're not talking to you. And that can be really, really frustrating. But it may be just because they're avoiding talking because they don't know how you're going to react, or they are worried about other people's emotions more than they're worried about their own. So they usually minimalize. Avoiding can go into two different kind of ways. So we have those who are avoidant because they are afraid of an argument, because they saw how it ended for people, or they know they're with someone who is aggressive or assertive and they're going to come at them. And so they're avoiding, and it's just kind of, they're disconnecting. But then you can have those who avoid in kind of the abusive, unhealthy ways. They are the ones who are going to minimize, and they're going to say, agree to disagree. Well, now you're avoiding, but that's disrespectful. It may be the partner that wants to pick their battles. Well, this isn't something I want to fight about. Well, I'm not trying to fight with you. I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. They're being avoidant because they don't want to, quote unquote, fight with you. The question is, why does it have to be a fight? Why would it be a fight? Why would we fight about this? I'm just trying to talk to you about something. I'm trying to tell you something that bothered me. And they're going to dismiss that and they're going to avoid that conversation with you. Again, with maybe the agree to disagree. No, we're not going to disagree on this. I need this from you, or you need to do this, whatever it is. There's no agreeing to disagree. We can agree to disagree in politics. We can agree to disagree on little things. We can agree to disagree on whether you like mushrooms or I like mushrooms or mushrooms are even good. But we can't agree to disagree on if something hurt my feelings. If I'm telling you something hurt my feelings, then you're discounting that. You're being avoidant. And that is really, really hurtful. And you can get that when someone stonewalls you. When we talk about that stonewalling, it's when someone just really withdrawals from a conversation. You may be mid-conversation. Maybe they started out being in that conversation with you, and then it started to become about them, or you're asking them to do something, and now they're just shutting down. They're acting like it's not real. They are just withdrawing from those situations instead of engaging with you. And that's not helpful. That's not something that we want to do. They also may try to give you logic or rationalize your answers, even when it's not really important what's logical. They may, ignore your feelings and be like, well, that's ridiculous because this. This. Okay, I may know that, but it still hurt my feelings. You want to not avoid in that way. You want to be someone who is engaged, and you're not deflecting back onto someone. You're not putting it back on them. You are avoiding altogether. And when we're talking about avoiding a argument, it's fine if listen, you came at me hot and now I'm coming hot and we need to stop. I'm going to go in the other room. That's a whole different type of avoiding. If you are avoiding a conversation, if you're avoiding an argument, if you're avoiding something coming at you because you are now feeling also heightened, you're feeling triggered, you're feeling that something is going to be an argument, and you say, listen, I don't want to argue with you about this, so I need time to process. I love you. I'm going to step away. We will circle back around. That's not being avoidant. That can be a respectful moment because you don't want to fight with your partner, because you don't want to become that, and you feel yourself becoming that way. So listen, I need to just step away. I need a moment. I need to get into a better headspace, and then we can talk about it, which also is going to give the other person time to relax, to calm down, to think it through, to have some further moments. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can't withdraw or avoid a conversation and never circle back around to it, especially if you have someone who really needs to have that conversation. In most relationships, especially unhealthy ones, or when people have unhealthy fighting styles, they may have a great relationship, but they have unhealthy communication. They have unhealthy fighting styles. It may be that you have a pursuer and you have a withdrawer, and the pursuer wants to talk. They're going to talk your ear off. They're not going to go, I don't want to go to bed angry. I want to talk about it. But your withdrawer is like, I need a minute to think about this. I need a minute to process this. I need to wrap my head around this. I need to understand the way you're feeling. I want to understand the way you're feeling. I didn't know what I did hurt your feelings. Give me a minute to think about it. And if you are communicating that with your partner, if you're saying, listen, I didn't even know this bothered you. I'm sorry. And I don't know what to tell you right now. Like, I need a minute to go think about it. Let me go think about this. You go think about it. We'll circle back around in 30 minutes. We'll come back together in a couple hours. Let me go work on something in the garage. Let me go do whatever it is. And then you come back to it though, because if you have someone who is a pursuer and someone who needs to have that conversation, for you, it may not seem like a big deal. You may think about it and go, oh, this isn't a big deal. That's fine. I can change that. And you don't want to talk about it anymore because you're done with it. It no longer bothers you. It no longer upsets you. But that other person needs to have that conversation. You need to give them the respect of having that conversation. Listen, I get that you get it. I get you apologize for it. But I really need to say what I need to say about it, because if I don't, it's going to eat me up, because I want to truly make sure you understand all the aspects of this. And having said all of that, I want to tell you what I need next time. So if this comes up again, what I need you to do is XYZ. What I need to do is XYZ. So you come up with ways to communicate better. And then you have those who just want to appease it. They want to get the conflict over as quick as possible. They want to resolve quickly, even if it's a premature resolution, even if they're just coming up with something that they know they're never going to do. These are the people that, quote unquote, will roll over, that are being walked on. They're making sacrifices for themselves, to their emotions, to what they want, feel, need, all of that, in favor of ending the argument. They just want it to be done. And the other person is winning, but it's at their expense. And a lot of times this comes from that self-sabotaging personality, this self-sabotaging belief that, yeah, I guess it is my fault. I guess I'm not ever going to be good enough. So this makes sense. Sometimes it is our compromisers too that also have these beliefs. They want to find that quick and acceptable solution. If everyone is, semi-satisfied, if we both get a little of what we want, they believe that it's going to end it. They want to end the conflict, but sometimes that's not good enough. And so if you have someone who is being a fixer, sometimes I don't need you to fix it. I need you to listen to me, and I need you to respond appropriately, or I need you to do what I'm asking you to give me in those moments. When I get emotional, when I feel like I'm being ignored, I do need that reassurance that you're just busy. I do need that reassurance that you love me. I do need that reassurance, whatever it is. If you are the person having the response to certain things, you also should have an answer. I know that this is what I need in this moment. And you may not know. You may say, okay, I get that you don't like to fight and you don't want to have conversations heated and you want me to tell you what bothered me and then you want to go think on it. So what I can do is give you a couple hours to go think on it, but I need to have that conversation. And you may say, okay, but before you walk off, I need you to say that you love me and all of these things. And sometimes we find those solutions ridiculous, but we want to find those solutions. We want an alliance. We want to recognize what we need. We want to validate the other person's feelings, and it may feel disingenuous. It may feel forced. You may be like, yes, okay. And you come a time and the moment comes and the other person starts to spiral because they're feeling unloved. They're feeling discounted. They're feeling rejected. And you may be like, oh my God, here we go again. And I do believe each partner has to work on themselves in those moments too. Like if it's commonplace for you to feel this and you know it's not coming from your partner, you need to work on yourself. You can't be in a healthy relationship and not continuously work on yourself. Even healthy individuals have to work on themselves constantly. We are always growing and changing and learning new things about ourselves and learning new ways that we need to communicate. And it's important that you do that. But in the meantime, you can say, I need this thing. I think I've given this example before, but I don't remember. I've had couples come in and they're like, well, they don't appreciate me anymore. And he used to bring me flowers, or she used to do this for me, and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, then do that for them. I want you to at least once a week or whatever it is. What do you need? And we find out from the partner what would make them feel complete, what would make them feel loved and heard and seen. Say, well, I need flowers at least once a week. Okay. Then the next day after that therapy session, the person comes home with flowers, and the partner says, well, you only did it because we talked about it in therapy. Yeah, maybe, but maybe the therapy and maybe you bringing it up in that moment or in the conversation, maybe you're not even in therapy, but you brought it up in the conversation and they do it the very next day. They don't need to be punished for that. Maybe they didn't realize that it was that important to you. Maybe they didn't realize that's something you need and it was on their mind. So they did it. So we're grateful and we say, thank you for hearing me. Thank you for taking responsibility. Thank you for taking action. Thank you for doing what you've done. And then you see if that becomes consistent, because that's what really anyone wants in any relationship, friends, families, whatever. They want consistency. You also need to clarify. We're not making excuses. We've all seen the shows with the therapy, and what I hear you saying is, and that may seem ridiculous, but it can also be really helpful. If you don't understand what someone is saying, or if it just seems so ridiculous to you because you've never had that feeling, you may want to clarify. Let's say someone comes home from work and they snap at you. And you're like, what the crap? Why are you being so rude to me? And they're like, I don't know. And then they think about it and they're like, you know what? I had a terrible commute and today was rough and I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that. Okay, that's fair. We've clarified that. We've talked about it. We've taken responsibility for our actions. But if you truly don't understand why someone is getting so upset, we have conversations when we're not upset to learn how to fight fair. If you know that you're not fighting fair, if you know that you and your partner are going off the rails every time you have communication, every time you try to talk about something, then when we're not in an emotional state, because remember, if we're emotional, we're not rational. So in a rational moment, when we're not in an emotional state, say, hey, how can we communicate better? Because I don't like fighting with you. And it may be about that clarification. It may be that, well, when you do this, it really hurts my feelings. And that doesn't even track with you, because if they did it to you, it wouldn't hurt your feelings, but it hurts their feelings. So we want to clarify, okay, so when I do this, it hurts your feelings. Can I ask why? Why? What do you feel? What is the emotion behind it? What are the thoughts behind it? How am I making you feel that way? And it's not in a, well, how am I making you feel that way? I don't even know how I could make you feel that way. That's ridiculous. They're feeling their feelings, and their feelings are valid. They may not seem understandable to you. They may seem off the chain. They may seem out of the box, but their feelings are their feelings, and they may not understand why they're feeling that way. So if we can get that clarification, if we can ask for those reasons, if you can recognize what is going on, then it can be super helpful for both of you to understand why you're feeling a certain way and what you need from your partner. Because it's important to fight fair. Ghosting is really easy to do these days. And disappearing from someone when there's conflict, or when you're feeling emotions you don't know how to handle, it may be easier to just not talk, but that's not fair to the other person. And if you really do care about the other person, then have that communication with them. Listen, I don't know how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I don't know what I need. So I just need a day to think about it. I need a few hours to think about it. Can you give me some space? And space doesn't necessarily mean the end of the relationship. It just means I need a minute to figure out what I need and what I want. That's not an unreasonable ask. And we want to understand our partner. And if you truly care about that person, you can give that to them. But if you're just disappearing on someone, if you're hanging up, if you're going and hiding in the room and not having communication, then yeah, it's creating anxiety in the other people. It's creating the unknown in the other person. And if they are anxious, if they're the pursuers, then yeah, they may blow your phone up. They may message you a lot. They may do all these things. But a simple communication would stop all of that. And the other person may be getting annoyed. Why are they calling so much? Why do they keep messaging me? If I'm not talking to them, I'm not talking to them. And yes, no communication is communication. But if you're in a relationship with someone, if you care about someone, why wouldn't you communicate with them? Why wouldn't you say, listen, I don't know how to talk to you about this right now, so I can't talk to you. Okay. I mean, that may be hard to understand for the other person, but at least you're giving them something. And it's going to help you take responsibility for your action. It's going to help them understand, and it's going to help you deal with things better. There's no way to not have conflict in relationships. There's no way to not have conflict in friendships, at workplaces, all of those things, but it's how you handle it that makes a difference. And it may be putting yourself in the other person's shoes. If they did this to me, how would I feel? If they said this to me, how would I feel? And you may be like, well, I would be fine with it. Okay, but you may be fine with it, but would they? Like, you need to know your partner. You need to know how they communicate. You need to know what's important to them. And if communication is important to them, maybe you're both withdrawers. Maybe you get in a little argument and you're not saying things that are hurtful. But you're getting a little bigger fight. And then you both go to your corners. And then in a couple of hours, you come back and you act like everything is fine. If everything is truly fine, if there is nothing else to be said about it, if you both know that you were both just being pissy and you got in a little argument and it was over something stupid and it's not even important to bring up, fine. But if one person still has something that's unresolved from that, if one person still needs to have a conversation about that, then have the conversation about that. You give that person the respect, because if you truly love that person, if you truly care about that person, you give them the respect to say, okay, listen, I don't understand why you're still upset, so help me understand. Not, there's no reason for you to be upset by this. Not, I don't understand it, so it doesn't make sense. Help me understand. Help me understand your needs. Help me understand how to handle that better. Help me understand what you need in these times where you are heightened, or I am heightened, or we're arguing, or whatever it is. Understand your partner's need and where they're coming from. And you can even say later, not during the fight, not when we're still heightened emotions. listen, that emotion that you had the other day about that fight has nothing to do with me or our relationship. That has never been anything that's happened in our relationship. That has never been anything that I have done to you. That may be some old shit that you really need to work on, because it's not fair for you to put that on me. And that is a reasonable thing to say. If you're in a good spot in your relationship, it may help your partner recognize, you know what, you're right. It's not a you thing. So I am going to work on it. While I'm working on it, though, please be patient with me, because I still may have these moments. And even after I've worked on it, I still may revert to some behaviors, and it may not be great. So I need you to be patient with me. We can have understanding for individuals, but we're not going to make excuses for them. If someone is having terrible, terrible behavior towards you all of the time, and they are not fixing that, they may say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'll work on it. But they're not working on it. They're not doing anything actively to change. They're not doing anything actively to be better, to understand you better, to act better. If you are doing all the legwork, like I talked about on last episode, if you are doing more work than they are, if you are putting all the work in, if they are putting out no effort and you're putting out all of the effort, then it's time for you to look internally and say, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I being the pushover? Why am I letting someone walk all over me? Why am I letting someone have this much control in my life? And you figure that out for yourself. But if you are in a good relationship that both people want to be in, then you figure out how to fight fair. You figure out how to have disagreements and come back together, and there's no harmful words said. We're not hurting each other's feelings in those time frames. We're not doing anything that is going to cause long-term damage. We're not building up contentment and resentment toward our partner. We're learning how to fight fair. And that's what's really important, is learning how to fight fair and learning how to understand the other partner, learning how to operate within their world. Because we all come from different places and we learn different things in what we want from a relationship, what a good relationship should look like, what a healthy relationship is. And sometimes their healthy relationship may not be your healthy relationship. It may not be the norm. So you need to figure out what it looks like for you to have a healthy relationship with that partner, with that friend, in your workplace, whatever it is. How do I communicate so that they understand me and that I understand them? And we're not giving up parts of ourselves that are important to you. We're not giving up our moral ground. We're not violating our own code of ethics. We're not violating our own wants and needs for relationships. We're compromising in a good way. We're coming together and saying, yes, this is a win-win. Because I understand when I get that way, it's ridiculous. And you understand when you get that way, it's ridiculous. And it's something we can work on, but we both have an understanding of it and we can move forward. And that's what you need to come to when we're having those arguments, when we're having those disagreements is, am I being complacent? Am I happy? Am I doing these things? What do I need? Is this the way I want to continue living? Is this a relationship I want? If your partner is hurting your feelings at every turn and they are doing nothing to change that, even though you're trying to communicate, they get mad at you. Well, I ask him for this, but every time I ask for something, he gets mad. Is that reasonable? Like, are you asking for unreasonable things or are you asking for normal things that you need? It's important to understand where you're coming from and what you're asking for. And it's important to understand that if they're not giving basic needs or basic wants or being understanding, then this may not be the partner for you. So it's really important to understand your fighting style, to understand your thought processes, to understand why you're upset. You shouldn't even be having a conversation about something that upsets you with your partner in the moment that you are upset. You need to process that. You need to figure out the why. You need to figure out what it's about and then figure out what you need from that. And then you have the conversation. Because if we're emotional, we are not rational. And when we're rational, we can have a conversation. It's not conflict. It's a conversation. It's communication. It's figuring out what you need and what you want. But when you're having those heated arguments, no one's listening. If you're both screaming, no one's listening. If you're going back and forth and doing this tit for tat, well, you, I wouldn't if you didn't, nothing good will come from that. You need to figure out how to stop that in its tracks and communicate better. And then your relationship will just get better and better and better because you do have a better understanding of your partner. You do have a better understanding of where they're coming from. And that's really what it's about in a relationship, is learning about your partner and learning what they need and how you can give that to them. And if you can't give that to them, letting them know, I can't do that for you. So how do we proceed? And figuring out those ways to communicate, because that is the biggest thing that will kill a relationship, is when we're not talking about what we need and what we want. want and what the fear is and why we're acting the way we're acting and what's going on with us. And if you don't understand it, then you can have a conversation. I don't know why I get upset by that, but it upsets me. Okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's figure out why you get upset by that. Or if you don't want to talk to your partner, you do get a therapist. You do talk to a friend. You do talk to a family member that may have some insight on why you act that way. And then you figure out a better way, because communication and how to communicate is so important. And I feel like we're losing it in generations. This is just a side note, but I think the texting and internet and all of those things have created a way that individuals don't communicate as well as they did before, because they don't have to have face-to-face conversations. They don't have to have even phone calls. They can text it, and a lot is lost in that. If you are arguing over text, stop it. We will talk about this when we can talk. We will talk about this when we can get on a video call. We will talk about this when we get home. We can talk about this when we meet up. Do not have arguments over text, because there's so much lost in that, and there's so much that can be read into it. There's a skit going around, and it's like a couple of friends talking about going out, and it's like, well, what would you want? Or whatever you need, whatever I need, however, and they're reading a tone into it that's not even there. So it's really important that if you catch yourself getting upset by something that was texted to you or whatever it is, that you stop yourself and be like, is this what they really mean? And if you don't know, you ask, and you have that open communication. But you shouldn't be arguing over text. Just stop. You need to sit down and have grown-up conversations about grown-up things in ways that aren't attacking, in ways that aren't assertive or aggressive. You want to have the respect for your partner to give them the time to talk to them about it. Have good communication, talk to your people, figure out what you need, figure out what you need from them and how they can give you what you need, figure out what they need and how you can give them what they need. And you'll probably have a pretty good relationship. Or you'll be in a place where if the relationship is going the wrong way, you realize, you know what, this isn't what I need. And you can part in a respectful, amicable way. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. You don't have to have this big, huge blow up and then never talk again. Like, it doesn't need to end that way. So work on your communication within yourself. How you talk to yourself is going to be a direct mirror of how you talk to other people. Be real mindful about how you say things, what you say, and being respectful of other people's emotions. And with that, I'll see y'all next week.
For my producer, Jay Lindley, I'm Leslie Ross. Thank you all for joining us. Please send any questions or comments through the website, heytherapist.com, or email help@heytherapist.com. They may be featured on the show anonymously. Hey Therapist is an SEOK radio production and is for your entertainment purposes only. Thank you for joining us. Make good choices.